Chibuzo, a once beloved son of Umuova village, had been presumed dead for 5 years following a tragic accident on a stormy river journey. His family, stricken by grief, held a funeral in his honor, mourning the young man they believed had been claimed by the waters. Yet, far from the village, Chibuzo had survived and built a secret life in the bustling city of Enugu. He buried his past deeply, afraid of the questions that might arise if he revealed himself. In Enugu, he met Amaka, a spirited woman with a kind heart, and together they started a new chapter, raising 2 sons. For years, Chibuzo avoided discussing his past with Amaka, masking his fear with vague responses. But as their children grew older, Amaka became insistent. "Our boys deserve to know their roots," she would tell him. "They need to meet their grandparents." The pressure weighed heavily on Chibuzo, torn between his carefully crafted new life and the ties of his forgotten past. Finally, after relentless persuasion, he relented and agreed to take Amaka and the boys to his family's village. The journey to Umuova began with cautious optimism. The family traveled in a weathered bus, their hearts a mix of excitement and nervousness. Chibuzo seemed distant but reassured Amaka that everything would go smoothly. By the time they reached the vibrant village market, alive with the chatter of traders and the aroma of roasted corn, Chibuzo's demeanor shifted. He suddenly stopped and said, "Wait here. I'll go ahead to prepare my family for your arrival. I'll be back shortly." Amaka watched him disappear into the crowd, holding tightly to her son's hands as they waited. Minutes turned into hours. The lively market began to quiet as evening approached, yet Chibuzo did not return. Anxiety gnawed at Amaka. Frustrated and worried, she began asking the villagers for directions to Chibuzo's family home, clutching a photograph of him. Most people shook their heads, unfamiliar with the face in the picture. Just as despair threatened to overwhelm her, an elderly man, Elder Onyema, paused at the sight of the photograph. His eyes widened in recognition. "I know this man," he said solemnly. "But he died years ago." Amaka froze. "That's impossible," she stammered. "This is my husband, the father of my children." Elder Onyema studied her intently, noting the desperation in her eyes and the resemblance of the children to the man he once knew. After a long silence, he said, "Come with me. I'll take you to his family." They walked through winding village paths, the setting sun casting long shadows over the land. Amaka's heart raced as they approached a modest compound. Chibuzo's mother, aged beyond her years by sorrow, stepped out of the house. Her gaze fell on the boys, and she froze, her trembling hand clutching her chest. Tears streamed down her face as she whispered, "They look just like him." Inside the family home, Amaka sat with the grieving parents, clutching her children protectively. That evening, Chibuzo's father, a dignified man with a deep voice, revealed the truth. "Chibuzo was our son," he said, his voice heavy with emotion. "But he has been dead for 5 years. We buried him after he drowned in the river." Amaka's world shattered. Overcome with shock, she fainted, and the children cried out in confusion. The next morning, the family took Amaka to Chibuzo's grave, a simple mound of earth marked by a wooden cross. Standing before the grave, Amaka fell to her knees, her cries piercing the still morning air. She wept for the man she had loved, for the lies she now knew, and for the uncertain future of her children. As she clutched the boys, she whispered, "What do we do now? Where do we go from here?" The villagers gathered quietly at a distance, murmuring about the mysterious events. Chibuzo's parents, though heartbroken, embraced the children as their own, vowing to honor their son's legacy by raising them as part of the family. Amaka, though lost in grief, found solace in their kindness and the strength to begin a new chapter, forever bound to the family of the man she thought she knew. In the days that followed, Amaka and her sons remained in the village, trying to piece together the puzzle of Chibuzo's double life. Questions lingered like an unspoken shadow, How could a man who had been dead for years father 2 children? What had truly happened to him after the supposed accident? And why had he chosen to keep his past hidden? Chibuzo's mother, Mama Ezin, was drawn to the boys, seeing in them the spirit of her lost son. She would often sit under the large mango tree in the family compound, recounting stories of Chibuzo's childhood, his mischievous antics, his dreams, and his deep love for family. "He was a good man," she said one evening, her voice thick with emotion. "Something must have driven him to leave us. Perhaps the river did not take him but spared him for reasons we cannot understand." Meanwhile, Chibuzo's father, Papa Namdi, took on a more pragmatic role. He arranged for the family elders to perform cleansing rites to protect the children and Amaka from any spiritual repercussions. The villagers whispered about curses and unresolved ancestral matters, speculating that Chibuzo's return as a ghost was a sign from the gods. Some said it was an omen, others a plea for justice or closure. Amaka, torn between grief and determination, decided to dig deeper into the mystery. She began asking the villagers about Chibuzo's life before his disappearance. Slowly, fragmented pieces of the story emerged. Chibuzo had been involved in a business dispute that turned sour, and on the day of the river accident, he had been fleeing from people who meant him harm. Could it be that he had staged his own death to escape danger? Or had something far darker driven him to leave his old life behind? One afternoon, while exploring Chibuzo's room, Amaka stumbled upon an old wooden box tucked under the bed. Inside were letters, photographs, and a journal that hinted at his inner turmoil. In one entry, Chibuzo had written, "I am a shadow of myself. To protect those I love, I must disappear. Perhaps one day, they will understand." The words pierced Amaka's heart, offering some explanation yet raising even more questions. As time passed, the villagers grew accustomed to Amaka and her sons, who were now regarded as part of the family. The children, initially confused and withdrawn, began to embrace their new surroundings. They played with other kids, learned local customs, and started speaking the Igbo language. The bond between them and their grandparents deepened, filling a void that Chibuzo's absence had left. But Amaka could not ignore the lingering tension. Some villagers, fueled by suspicion and fear, began to spread rumors. "A man who returns from the dead brings misfortune," one elder said during a village meeting. Others questioned the legitimacy of Amaka's claims. Were her children truly Chibuzo's? Could her presence disrupt the fragile peace of the family? To address the growing unrest, Papa Namdi called for a family and community gathering. He invited the village elders, spiritual leaders, and key figures to discuss the situation openly. During the meeting, Amaka stood bravely, holding her son's hands. She recounted her life with Chibuzo, her love for him, and her belief in the importance of family unity. She showed the letters she had found, revealing Chibuzo's internal struggle and his longing to reconcile his 2 lives. Moved by her sincerity, the elders performed a final rite at Chibuzo's grave, seeking his spirit's guidance and forgiveness. As the flames of a sacred fire danced in the night, the community offered prayers for peace and understanding. The tension that had gripped the village began to ease. By the story's end, Amaka decided to stay in the village, allowing her sons to grow up surrounded by their father's legacy. Though the pain of loss remained, the family found a measure of healing. Together, they honored Chibuzo not as a man of secrets but as a symbol of love and resilience, a bridge between 2 worlds that fate had unexpectedly united. The tale concludes with a poignant reminder: life is often a mosaic of joy and sorrow, secrets and revelations. Chibuzo's choices may never be fully understood, but his legacy lives on in the family he left behind, united by love and bound by destiny.